Um, so I'll just give you a quick overview on EFM Ireland. John's going to run through cash flow forecasting and tips to help guide through the crisis, and then I'll run through some of the supports that the government have, and it's kind of a moving feast, but there's some great supports for SMEs, so sometimes it's just about finding the right ones, or maybe you need a bit of help to access these, with financial planning, etc. But EFM, basically, just a quick run through, we're a network of finance directors, and we set up in Ireland in around 2017. We've got 7 finance directors who work with us and work with a wide variety of SMEs around Ireland. It's all about flexible pay-as-you-go finance director services. So as companies expand, they don't need to have a full-time FD. They just might need to use some of our experiences and get some financial controls in place and improve the reporting and some discipline around the board structure. So that's what we're about. And so we're novel enough for the Irish market that flexibility that we have is really helpful for a wide variety of SMEs. And we've been helping quite a lot since mid-March as well. We've been appointed onto the Enterprise Ireland approved panel and LEO Central Dublin approved panel of business consultants. So we're trying to help businesses get back on their feet a bit, and to help them access some of the funding, and just want to help get Ireland moving again, really. So John, did you want to run through the cash flow slides for us, please?
Yeah, be delighted to. Hi to everyone. Lovely to meet you, and thanks for coming on board. I suppose just give you, I work with a range of small and medium-sized businesses that are essentially foreign owned. So I work with companies that are local businesses, but they have head offices in Japan, Hong Kong, Milan, Paris, and I work with a couple of businesses that are solely Irish as well. And there is no doubt that this whole COVID-19 problem that we're dealing with and what we're dealing is a global problem. And it's a problem that we're having to more or less learn on a day-to-day basis. It's unprecedented in all of our business careers. So it's an interesting one. So I think as well, the key driver, before we kind of go into specifics, is really about communicating and having a dialogue within your businesses, and that's with your customers and your suppliers. The issues that we're all dealing with are not going away, and they're very deep rooted, and they will have impacts on the business, serious impacts both in the immediate and the medium and the long term. So to open up that dialogue with your customers and your suppliers is absolutely critical. In terms of on your customers, and I kind of dip in and out of specific experience I have, generating cash becomes key to the business, depending on the type of business you're in. And it's really important to actually see, well, how can we generate some cash now? So businesses that are in retail have looked at internet. Businesses that maybe have a fixed business are looking at home deliveries and anything to generate cash. And certainly in the retail area, being able to generate immediate cash is really beneficial to the business. Looking at your internet offerings, looking at your eBay potentials offerings, and looking at how you can maybe employ your staff through telephone, etc. can work well. Knowing your customers and having that dialogue, communicating through emails, social media, all helps to to get the message out, both while in the lockdown, but also when you start to come out of the lockdown, and that you need to make sure that your customers know that you're in business. So again, having those email channels, emails, blogs, Facebook, Twitter, all of these tools can be essential in having that dialogue with your customers if you're in a high volume with small transactions, or if you're with larger key accounts that you need to maybe speak to on a one-to-one basis. I think as well, overall, in managing your cash and where the position are, you need to make sure that your bookkeeping is absolutely up to date and accurate, so that everything is all your invoices are out, that you've spoken, that your statements are correct, and what your information that you're sending out to your customers is correct. And more importantly, that all your supplier invoices and your purchase invoices are as well on your ledgers, and you know exactly what your payment position is and what your commitments are. In particular, you need to watch out for colleagues, managers, directors who have a habit of dropping invoices into drawers and maybe waiting for to pull and not fully up to date. So an email comes into a director, but he hasn't passed it on to accounts, and there's an invoice there that should be sitting on the ledger that it isn't. That expense claims are all up to date, and that in particular as well, if you're furloughed and you're not going to your office, that someone occasionally can go in and maybe have a look at the post and see if there's anything critical that's come through in the post as well, especially invoices that should be on the ledger and things that you're expecting. If you know you should be getting something through the post and as it come, contact the supplier and ask them to email it to you. Fairly simple stuff, but effectively, if you're going to start getting your cash flows right, you need to know that all your receivables and that all your bills payable are on the ledger and absolutely correct, so that when you're sending out statements, they are correct, but also that you're fully aware and you've taken everything into account on your payable side. And with that, then you can effectively look at what your present cash resources and reserves are, what your receivables, what your payables. Obviously, there are a whole range of remedies and actions that you can take, and I won't go into those because that's where Will is going to come in later with the actual sites that are going into it. Credit control, looking at key accounts and key managers, much better that you do it on the phone, and it's probably better that, as I say, if you have key suppliers, that you're talking to those suppliers. If we think about it in terms of what are the bills we have to pay, well, the four big things usually are your wages, your government taxes, and the other one, your rent and your key suppliers. Certainly talking to your landlord is very useful, and that understanding what any reliefs that are available or any relief that your landlord may be prepared to give to you. Again, HMRC, well, HMRC or the revenue, HMRC in the UK, the revenue should be on your radar as well, and you should be having a dialogue. I'll leave that for Will as well when he comes on later. Yeah. Right, next slide, Josh. Can I get it on there? Of course, looking at your cash burn, really important. Have you got expenses that are going out in direct debit that you can put a deferral on? A lot of business doing that. Certainly gym fees. I know that's from a personal point of view, you know, direct debits are going out that you're paying and you're not using them. Again, most of the suppliers in those areas are prepared to kind of freeze or have a dialogue with you. Looking at your expenditure, looking at areas that you can kind of cut back. Are you getting the best prices? But again, lots of opportunities out there to defer, to slow down, or to get better value on what you're paying. Again, the revenue, the VAT side, moving to cash accounting scheme. Again, I won't go into what the remedies revenue are doing, and we're looking at staff VAT. But again, all of those things in reducing the cash burn are kind of very much part of the practical help that's being provided. Next slide, Josh, please. Working with your creditors, as I say, that's a case of having the dialogue, knowing what your cash position is, understanding your cash flow, seeing what you can commit to, what you can do, and have those discussions with key suppliers. I certainly work with a number of telecoms companies, one in particular that does SMS texting. So it's kind of absolutely essential that those supplier invoices are paid, and they are usually top of our bill. We don't want to be in position, because if we don't pay those bills, we go out of business. There may be ones that are less critical, and again, have that discussion with your supplier, let him know what your cash position is, keep the dialogue going, and keep the cash flowing at some level, so that there's effectively you're not completely letting that particular business drop off the cliff. It's a matter of balancing in that. You will, as businesses, will have customers who are finding difficulty in paying you, and likewise, as a result, there may be a situation you're having difficulty paying with your suppliers. You have to have that conversation. But to do that, your bookkeeping, as I say, needs to be up to date, and your cash flow needs to be accurate, and probably reviewing that cash flow on an almost daily basis is very important. Okay, Josh. So go back, I've kind of hit on the cash forecasting. It's saying here 13-week forecasting, and I would say 13-day forecasting, looking at what's coming in, looking at what's going out. Yeah, I probably covered most that's in there. Any questions to date? Anyone want to come in with anything? I think it's really a case of what's realistic views, and I think the reality of where we are at the moment is realism, that you have to be honest with what your business is doing, and that message has to go out, and you have to have that with your dialogue throughout. Okay, Josh.
Okay, just to pick up on some of those reliefs that are out there, just a quick overview on the SME, just to sort of put it into context, there's over 250,000 SMEs in Ireland, and they actually employ almost 3/4 of the workforce, which is higher than in most other EU countries, so the government needs to get support there, and I'm not sure it's getting there quick enough at the moment, but and a huge proportion of this workforce will be either on the wage subsidy scheme or on the 350 unemployment, the pandemic unemployment payment. And then 50% of these SMEs expect their revenue to decline by at least 60% during this. This was an April, May, June sort of 3-month period, but it seems to be quite slow for some sectors to come out. So this period is going to extend a bit more, unless they change to speed it up a little bit, So, and then 6 out of every 10 companies have looked to defer payments, between either with the revenue or with the banks or with the landlords in Ireland. So that's just putting into a bit of context, the problems out there. If you just flick to the next slide, Josh. So I'm going to rattle through this quickly enough, because if there's questions at the end, it might be useful. But basically, just the wage subsidy pandemic scheme, revenue debt management, the restart grants, which are now operational, LEO, which is more relevant for quite smaller businesses. And then I'll just touch on Enterprise Ireland and then SBCI, just so that you kind of maybe understand at the top level how these things work. So I won't spend too long here. So this was brought in mid-March, and they upped the amounts of the wage subsidy scheme for employers. So it was supported up to 410 per week to kind of keep staff employed, basically, and the employer has to demonstrate a loss of 25% of trade. And also, for small business owners there, when the scheme expires, they have this warning, that all employers will be listed. So that's kind of to try and either, highlight companies that might have claimed it that shouldn't have, or it helps with the self-governance they felt, but they haven't done this yet. I mean, the scheme is still extended, and it was in the paper at the weekend about this point that they are going to list the companies. And then the pandemic unemployment payment that was came in March, and they increased it quickly enough from 203 to 350. And now, as you're aware, you've got people who are part-timers maybe earning 150 to 200, have doubled their money and stuff. So it's there's some people who are getting more money than they should be, but they're not able to. They haven't addressed that yet, but I'm sure they will pretty soon, because again, there's a big clamor behind us to get it sorted and tighten up a bit. Just the next slide, Josh. So then the revenue debt management. So I think the key thing here is that the revenue are being supportive. So they've stopped all debt enforcement activity. So if you haven't paid your VAT bill, they've suspended chasing you up on that. But it's important that you file your returns. So most people, I mean, it depends, but a lot of companies will be filing every 2 months. So sort of from January through to June, they've confirmed VAT. February to June for PAYE, that's the taxes on the salaries, that they've suspended charging interest on late payments. And what they've done is they're setting up this, we call it tax debt warehousing. So basically they will move these debts into this vehicle almost, and then for the first year, once the sector reopens, there'll be no interest charged on any of those revenue monies that are owed to revenue, which is pretty helpful. But they will be repayable, obviously, at the end. And then after a year, they will charge you 3% on per annum, which is cheap as well. But everything will have to be repaid. So it's not a grant or money off as such, but it is helpful for cash flow. Next slide, Josh. Yes, and then the restart grants was a good one, practical one. I feel this one should have come in a bit earlier, to be honest. So it's a €250 million support for SMEs, so business turnover less than 5 mil if you employ up to 50 people, and if you've had to close down, or if you've been impacted by at least 25% reduction in turnover. So most companies are going to qualify for this, to be honest. And the grant is the equivalent of whatever rates you paid in 2019. So it mightn't be so relevant for Iconic because you've got the license subscriptions different, but small companies who've paid rates, they can get a grant of that rates bill from 2019, minimum 2,000, maximum 10,000. And then you just apply through the local authority websites, and there's a link in here. Josh will send these around after, just direct to each website, and you have to put in some details, maybe about 25 questions, but it's not too onerous, it's probably half an hour or something. And I think that one you have to apply by I think maybe it's August, the end of August, so there's a bit of time, but it's the best just to apply now and get it sorted if you qualify for it. Next slide, Josh. So the local enterprise office are really trying to support the SMEs. And the first one, unfortunately, it's closed down. So there was a business continuity voucher scheme, but I've left it there because some companies have applied and they still haven't been allocated a business advisor. So this is where they're allocating a grant of 2,500 to help with your financial planning, or to work with people like us in effect, to help maybe then go for your loan applications and stuff. So there was the deadline of that one was the 15th of May, so it was just over 2 weeks ago. But I know there's a lot of companies, there was a huge take up of this, and the LEO hasn't got around to allocating all the companies. So just some companies might still be in the mix, or there's no talk of them bringing it back in. I hope they do, but it may be something that's available if you've applied. And then they've also got the Microfinance Ireland so this is your first sort of support and your easier one to access probably. So they're offering loans of up to 50k. So small companies, less than 10 staff, maximum turnover of 2 2 million, it might be difficult getting the back finance with the bank. So this is an option, and it's to qualify. It's for working capital, so that's just to maintain the business operating. And if it's been impacted by COVID-19, which again most people will qualify for this. And it's usually a 3-year term. The first 6 months they are allowing interest free and repayment free. And the interest rate is reasonable, 4.5%. But they want you to apply through the LEO. If you apply direct, it's 5.5%. So it's better to funnel it through the LEO. And then there's no fees or hidden costs. So that is a useful loan. And I just read, was either this morning or yesterday, that they're trying to pump more money into this scheme, and some of these schemes are linked to the new government being in place, so legislation goes through, so there'll be more funds available here. They might even maybe tweak the interest rate as well a little bit to bring it down. I don't know, but that's a good source for a loan option for SMEs. Next slide, please, Josh. So then just the other ones I'm just going to quickly pop through, but with your local enterprise office, they're offering mentoring, and it's now free of charge to clients. So it might be financial mentoring, or business strategy. So that is something that's out there that can be availed of. So I'd urge everyone to discuss this with their LEO. This is a good one, actually. I've applied for a couple of these for clients. The trading online voucher, they've had this in before, but they renewed it for COVID-19. So you only have to fund 10%. So for example, if you upgraded your website online, it has to have sort of an online selling component. But you can have it you could just set up to have vouchers for your business online and you'd qualify. So they will cover 2,500, which could be 90%. So you could spend, say, 2,800 and you can get refunded for 2,500 of it. It's very, very good. It's a fairly straightforward process. You just have to, you apply with them online, and then you have to attend a seminar. But it's a webinar thing. It's just about going through the motions about online marketing and stuff. And then they should approve you then, and then you can spend to upgrade your website. So lots of companies have been taking advantage of this one. They also have lots of use and training webinars like what we were doing ourselves, or whatever. So cash management and crisis, leading your business through COVID-19, advice for employers. So these are all useful free supports and help your learning. They've got Lean for Micro. They've always had these kind of supports. So again, it's consultancy supports with qualified experts to help maybe look at your costs. And you can also use this, they've said, for to implement remote working and physical distancing guidelines. So there's support there that should be looked for companies who have increased costs due to this. And they also have other supports: business primary grants, expansion grants, feasibility. They have all a lot of supports there. They're trying to encourage people to use those. Next slide, Josh. So then Enterprise Ireland. So these are slightly bigger companies usually. So they would have staff. This financial planning grant is for staff if you've got 10 or more full-time employees, manufacturing or internationally traded services. And then basically they are funding a financial planning grant to create almost a mini business plan. There's a lot of financials within there, more than it's not your normal business plan, like really detailed. It's more financial aspects of it, really. And the idea is that the banks, it's in the format that the banks are more amenable to. But it also helps to access one of their funds, which is on the next slide, Josh. I think it's the next slide. So they've got the Sustaining Enterprise Fund, which allows companies to apply for, they call it a repayable advance of up to 800k, and it's a bit different to a loan and interest. So it is repayable subject to project objectives being achieved. So yeah, they agree with the project objectives, which might be that turnover will reach pre-COVID levels, or I'm not sure exactly on the objectives that they're going to set, and then there's an annual admin fee of 4%. So there'll be companies who won't hit the objectives, and then the money won't be repayable, I suppose, but there'll be some that will. So that is one that's being pushed at the moment, and these financial plans are going to help companies to access this fund. Then Josh, next slide, please. Then the SBCI is where the government backs some of these schemes, so that the idea is that to make everything a bit more liquid and to support the banks who can offer money under these schemes. So there's a working capital scheme, a credit guarantee scheme, and a future growth loan scheme. So some of these, they will lend you money for a longer period of time. There's different conditions attached to these, and again, a couple of these they're ready to go, but they're waiting on the government. So it's in that for the legislation to go through. So it's different in the UK, where companies, all the SMEs have been really heavily supported pretty quickly. And here it's more like the intention is to support them, but it's not quite happening quickly enough from what we're seeing on the ground, So I think it's a bit more, there's still more money to flow through to SMEs. But the intention seems to be there. They just need to speed this up, so that more SMEs can survive and thrive when things are opened back up. And I don't know, was there a couple of small wrap-up slides Josh left? Yes, so there's a government support link. This is quite a good link because there's a lot of stuff. When you look at it first, there's like about 50 different things there, but it is quite good as a central source for a lot of the things that I mentioned. And there's also specific guidance for sectors and reopening roadmaps. So it's a handy, quick one that you can reference onto. And then I think, is that it, Josh? Yeah, so basically, so we have, EFM have a callback service, but it's just a free 30-minute consultation. We're happy to talk to any SME to discuss your issues, and give you a bit of a steer, and help out where we can, or maybe to access some of these grants, or help with loan applications, help with the financial planning exercises that are required. That's what we're all about, So that's, again, it's another free service. If anyone wants to avail that, just pop me an email, or the number's there. Josh is going to send this around after.